And it is a beautiful morning here in the Midwest, especially if you like overcast skies and high humidity. Temperatures in the upper 60s, early 70s, and it has that kind of a hit you in the face impact factor. You don't really feel like you're out there in the air. You feel like you're out there in a cloud
Mm.
with lots and lots of moisture.
Ah, yes. It reminds me of the first time I ever visited Hawaii, and I walked out of the cabin of the airplane door and into this warm blanket of dampness that is the Hawaiian climate, and it was like a blanket enveloping me. Maybe not the same blanket feeling here if it's not quite so warm, but yeah, I always kind of like that humidity. So.
Yeah, it is. Although Hawaii stays in that 70, 80-degree range, whereas I remember the first time I landed in the Philippines in Manila and stepped off the plane, and it was the 4th of July,
Mm.
and it was like 106 degrees with the same humidity factor. And I thought I was going to pass out. So, especially having flown out from sunny California, so it was nice and dry where I was at. So anyway, that's the minutia of what's going on at the bottom of Lake Michigamme here in the city of Chicago and the peripheral suburbs for anybody who might want to ponder that, although I don't really feel like that's ponderable if ponderable is in fact a word.
Well, I think if it is, then you should go have some dinner at Ponderosa while you're doing that.
Ah, yes. Big slab of beef on the plate, slightly singed on the outside, and still moving in the center. That's the way I enjoy. I grew up in a ranch environment, so
I see.
well done meat to me is really kind of like a perversion. I would
Like
even
this.
take I would even take a well done steak into a transgender bathroom.
We're hitting all the hot button issues here. This is our topical Course in Miracles talk this morning.
Well, we might as well get them all out so we can look at them, right? Isn't that the idea here? Nothing should be obscured.
There we go.
Even our fear of death or the death of those things around us, which is pretty much interchangeable because when we fear our death, um, it is the cosmic death
Mm.
that we're believing is real. And in fact, the truth of the matter is we just fall asleep for a few minutes and then wake up in a different circumstance and have to figure the whole mess out all over again.
Yes, the little dance we play, pretending we're a body, and then pretending we die, and then pretending we go into a new body, and then ad nauseum until we really do get sick of it. And like Bill said to Helen, there's got to be another way. And the truth is, there is another way, and that's what we're studying here in A Course in Miracles, and we're talking about as we continue on with our journey through the section in the Manual for Teachers of what is death. So as I like to say, it's just two happy guys talking about death.
And that is a very lighthearted sort of conversation when you step back enough to get outside of your own ego.
It's true. It's true. It doesn't have to be heavy. It's just that we believe it's real. Actually, that's why it feels so heavy. And I'm not saying you should go out and jump in front of a semi-truck to prove me wrong. I'm really saying that we can be sensitive and kind even when we're dealing with this heavy topic. And as we really do start to get that everything in the ego thought system is untrue, we get that is actually the case about death as well. So that's what we're working on today.
Yes, and starting us right off here, in the third paragraph of this section on death, it says, "Death is a symbol of the fear of God." And boy, does that ever resonate once you actually start to examine where that fear comes from around death. Because I think it was Albert Einstein who made the statement that, there's no reason to fear death because nobody ever got hurt after they died. So in that convoluted thinking, then the fear of life would make more sense because you can be hurt.
Well, it's true, but I think it draws a very good distinction between real life, as the Course talks about life with a capital L, and this sort of pseudo life that is what we actually think is life here. So we think that life is getting up in our bodysuit each day and walking around in our bodysuit while we bear the slings and arrows of fate, as Shakespeare said. But it really is not the truth. As another Shakespeare line I think we maybe referenced recently, all the world's a stage. So this is really just like a big play that's happening. And this body we think we are is actually just like a character in the script. So we start to step into getting that we are actually the maker of the whole play. We're maker of this whole world of time and space. And we're not actually just a small character in it. Now that seems like a big change, and it's a big change, but it's just a mental change. It's a change from believing in a story to waking up from that story. And that's really what we're working on doing over and over as we do feel these challenges that we go through.
Exactly. It's interesting because once you start to actually step into the Course and start really playing around with the deeper concepts that you encounter early on, actually, in the Course, you start to recognize that dimensionality and this flat surface of a life experience that we're thinking that we're having is so much a part of that very illusion in itself that it's just absurd to try and sort any of this stuff out, because all of it is going down the rabbit hole.
It's true. I mean, if you thought Alice needed to make sense of that crazy world she was in, well, she tried, as we all know from the story. It didn't go so well for her because there was really no sense to be made. The more sense she tried to make of it, the sillier the story got, and the sillier all the characters got. And here we are kind of trudging through our seemingly solid 3D world, trying to make sense of it. But what we don't realize is that all the rules here are topsy-turvy. Everything here is not what it seems. And you're sharing about the real unreality of this physical plane leads me to a teaser I gave Chris before we started. He used the word undulation, and it reminded me of an experience I had a couple days ago. I was meditating, kneeling on the carpeted floor, and I opened my eyes during the meditation, and I saw the carpet moving up and down. Really undulating is a good word for what was happening to the carpet. And it was a little bit of a trippy experience, but I knew that it was showing me something important. And what it was showing me was that this physical world that we seem to think is truth is not actually true. There's no real reality to it. And it is as unreal as any fairy tale we've ever heard, as any children's story that's ever been told. And that experience for me of the floor actually moving up and down helped me to get on a deeper level that this world that seems to be all around us is not actually happening. So I think I'm still absorbing that, but that's the experience I had.
That is interesting because, I seem to have been having little shifts like that myself. And it is fascinating how things come along that cause you to stop and question the things that you're taking for granted in the day-to-day routine. One of the things that one of the new movies that has come out in the last year from that Avengers series was Ant-Man. And of all of them, of all the Avengers series, I think Ant-Man has rapidly become my favorite. And so we have this guy who is taken from what we consider to be the normal world and reduced to the size of an ant. And the way this is accomplished is by reducing the size of the empty space in an atom. And that really is an interesting concept, because I don't know how workable that would be, but it definitely is something that the mind likes to pick up and bounce around, the basketball court a few times. But it is all a point of perspective. It's what your perspective in life is. And if you're feeling like you don't have any power, if you're feeling like you're vulnerable, if you're feeling like there is a world out there that is trying to oppress you, then you're most definitely identifying with the realm of the ego. And that's a very static realm that locks you into an environment that you have to have super duper technology in order to overcome. And you still are facing the vulnerability factor, on any level. So the Course offers us a sense of identity that, as we awaken to it and begin to step into it, helps us transcend all of those problems and fears and issues that we carry from birth.
Yeah. And as we're talking about this concept of death, it's really woven into everything that we experience here. There's nothing here that can live without something else dying. It's just the way of this physical plane. And we sort of have a hierarchy of death. Death of a human is worse than the death of a worm. For example, is worse than the death of a small plant or something like that. So we have this hierarchy of illusions, as Jesus talks about, and we have to start to get that it's really an all or none thing. We either are identifying with the ego's thought system, or we are relinquishing it. And the good news is that as we relinquish the ego thought system, we step into more and more joy. So just to read a little bit more about this idea of death, he says, it holds an image of the Son of God in which he is laid to rest in devastation's arms, where worms wait to greet him. I didn't even realize worms were in here. So where worms wait to greet him and to last a little while by his destruction. Yet the worms as well are doomed to be destroyed as certainly, and so do all things live because of death. So this is the kind of law of nature, the cycle of life as we call it here. But we don't often look at how really unrelentingly cruel it is to believe that this is God's will. It's really insane to think that God has anything to do with a world like this.
Yeah, it's based on constant bloodbath and the fear and the panic, and ultimately it's portraying God as being everything that in our instinct about God is antithetical to God. If we approach God with the idea that God is love and peace and harmony and joy and the expression of all the good attributes in life, then you look around you, it's like nothing in this world could even enter the mind of God, because it is so antithetical to the consciousness, the thought of God itself.
Mm-hmm. And I think what you're describing there, Chris, is really just the kind of bright line that distinguishes between the thought system of love and peace and our messed up thought system of the ego that we've been really kind of wallowing around in and wading through, lost in the wilderness. That only what is eternal is true. Everything else is not real. Now that's a pretty high bar, but it helps us to understand what we can rely upon, because we've been building our house upon the sand our whole lives. And we do that every time we think some job is going to make us happy, some person or relationship is going to make us happy, a little bit more money or a new car will make us happy. All these things that we really hook our ideas onto, that this is the answer. But the problem is those things always change. So we're resting our hope on something that is fleeting. And Jesus says, no, rest your house upon the rock. That is where you really want. And what the rock is spirit. The rock is truth. The rock is love. And we just start choosing that more and more in our life. And we start to have more happiness, more joy, more love in our life. So that's our ongoing practice that we do again and again and again.
Yeah, it's stepping out of that addiction to the flesh. Because again, when you're 22 years old and your skin is nice and tight and, you got a perky little pair of boobs or a nice little butt, it's a wonderful world that you're living in. But, when you're carrying those boobs on each hip at your 78th birthday and looking at this mass of wrinkles and the ongoing decay of the flesh itself, that brings you back into a whole different point of view. And as we start to make that transition into perhaps a little bit nobler sense of identity, imagine yourself as pure light, pure joy, pure love, pure beauty. That is a whole different mindset, and it's not corruptible in any way. And that's the beauty of stepping away from our earthly identity, because we do escape all of that deterioration and that darkness. And you'll find that people who identify themselves as spiritual beings rather than as physical beings tend to generate a response in most areas that they step into of people not really noticing their physical appearance, because they're seeing that light that is coming forth from within the individual. And I think that's one of the attributes of people who just don't attach themselves to their physicality, is that they do have that ageless sense of presence in any environment that they step into.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think it makes sense. As we identify more and more with what is eternal, then the time bound or the time part of our personality here is less and less the dominant part. How many of us are kind of running our lives around by the clock, and we're always rushing from one thing to the next. And there's a sense of there's never enough time. Like, well, what is that but a lack thought? What is that but a thought that abundance can end? So in a way, you could say that sort of time pressure or time worry is actually a form of death.
It is.
Yeah. So we just need to keep looking at that and keep questioning it, because it's really not good enough for you. Sometimes when you see one of your friends with a partner, and you're like, you kind of want to say that to them, but maybe you don't, because you like, they have to make their own choices. But death is not good enough for you, honey. You can find better.
Oh, that's kind of that's kind of an interesting, very scorpionic vision of. But as we go on here in this fourth section, we have, I think, a brilliant pair of thoughts. It says, if death is real for anything, there is no life. Death denies life. But if there is reality in life, death is denied. No compromise in this is possible. And that's the beauty of it, is that we are playing a game here where there is no room for compromise. We can't slip into shades of gray. It's either black or white.
Yeah, well, the next few lines are really gorgeous too. There is either a God of fear or one of love. Wow. The world attempts 1,000 compromises and will attempt 1,000 more. Not one can be acceptable to God's teachers, because not one could be acceptable to God. He did not make death because he did not make fear. Both are equally meaningless to him. So, I mean, if you want a clear statement that God didn't make this world, there it is.
Pretty much. And, you know, the whole thing is, in those last few words, both are equally meaningless to him. So then that removes the potential for engaging in a battle. You're not engaging in a battle, because if death is not real, and if this world is not real, every time that you're out there fighting windmills like Don Quixote, you're actually identifying yourself on the side of the illusion rather than on the side of your own divinity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and divinity will always win out, no matter how much we drag our feet and keep choosing the ego. In the end, we're going to realize our truth. We can't not be what we are. It's just that simple.
Exactly. So ultimately, you will come down to the river and get baptized, but not in water, but in pure light.
Oh.
And that is the most brilliant form of baptism. It's called the atonement.
I think that's a perfect ending to our talk today, Chris. This has been really, really nice sharing about this with you.
This has definitely been a great share, and opens doors for even further communication. So in 1 week, we're going to be coming back together for another discussion, and we'll probably stick around with death here for another 1 or 2 videos, simply because it is such a rich subject, and we can definitely examine it from multiple different angles.
Well, when you said death is a rich subject, I got an image of the Grim Reaper with a big gold chain around his neck or something, you know?
Yes, that kind of Trump thing where death has his own private airline. This is death instead of Trump on the outside.
There you go. There you go. He's got his own casino.
Right. Well, actually, he doesn't. You know, Las Vegas, they don't allow him to have a casino in the Trump hotel there.
Oh, really?
I mean, yeah. I mean, that tells you how much they are willing to trust young Donald, in that after the fiasco in Atlantic City, Las Vegas, which is, you know, kind of a flesh pot in itself, won't trust the young Donald to have his own casino now.
Yeah.
I'm not making a political statement. I'm just saying there is something to ponder within all of that silliness, and
all of our tribalisms and the different ways that all shows up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, Barrett, I will speak to you in 1 week. We do have something coming up for you and I on the 5th of June down here in Alsip. So stay tuned. We'll give you more information as we get closer to that date, but it'll be an opportunity to hang out and talk about A Course in Miracles.
All right. You know, we both love doing that. So we'll look forward to connecting with you then. And yeah, I would just say as kind of a closing thought, if death is on your mind a lot, you know, realize that it's not your truth, and that you can step out of it. There's always a loving hand that's being extended out to you, and it's always a choice you can make to reach out and take it.
That is absolutely a fact. Well, buddy, I'll see you in 7 days.
Sounds good. All right. Have a good week, Chris.
You too. Bye.
Bye.